Hi, everybody. This is Mr. B. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of some tips for this week's project. We're searching the web to find well-designed artist websites. Now, again, I'm not asking you to make your own website, but what we are doing is kind of using the idea of website design to help guide our digital portfolios. So we want to think about how to lay these out, how to select the works, whether we have too little information or too much information. And of course, we're also looking for artists' statements. We'll be looking at that issue specifically next week. So it's a good idea to be looking at websites to see if artist statements are included this round as well. So I pulled a few examples that I thought would be useful to you as you go forward. So this is a good example of a kind of common format for an artist website that I think is appealing to some people, but is really, to me, visually overwhelming, too much information all on one screen. It does give us some sense of the artist's style, but it's a little bit of a jumble as far as trying to view individual images. It's not necessarily organized into separate categories or themes, and it's hard to find dates and materials. So this particular example is not by any means terrible, and obviously the artist has quite a bit of talent. In fact, this particular artist is a graduate, Bachelor of Fine Arts, BFA graduate of UC Berkeley. An interesting side note, though, is that in her FAQs, which is the closest thing we really have to an about page, closest thing we have to an artist's statement in her case, it really is kind of intriguing that she discusses at some length the fact that she feels very much self-taught despite having a degree, and that she advises other people to follow that route as well. That is an interesting point, I'm sure, and you can certainly see the skill that's going on in these works, but I do question whether the presentation or that particular type of statement would be useful to you if you were looking to show your work to a professional jury. I just want to pull up the actual website itself just to kind of show you the intense amount of information that's there. There's a lot of physical scrolling. It's kind of hard to know when pieces were done. The styles do kind of change from one piece to the next. So in a way, the organization to me is a little bit too much with this particular example. So perhaps another way of doing things would be this example, which is somewhat similar in that there are a lot of artworks on the homepage when you launch it. This is Carlos Hernandez, who is a very well-known professional printmaker. He has been touring the country over the last several years. He is very well known for his designs, particularly for posters, for, advertising for musical shows at different venues of different sizes, not at huge stadium exhibitions, for example, but in smaller venues. So bands that you may have heard of have hired him to do their promo designs. And he has a very unique sense of style. Most of these are silkscreen and lino cut combinations. So the work itself is really quite good, and it's interesting to take a look at his site because he does include some semblance of an artist statement. He has an about tab, and if you click on that, there's a bio, and a lot of people mistake the bio or your biographical background as being the artist statement. Really, they are separate things, and you can see that here at the bottom of the screen is his artist statement. It is not that this one is bad, it's that it is a little bit brief. It's a little hard to envision exactly what it is that he does from these few sentences, but he does hit a couple of the main points. He does tell you about his process. That is much more interesting to your potential readers and viewers than hearing about your specific biographical background. One piece of advice that I would urge you to consider is that when you're looking at including any biographical element in your artist statement, make sure that that is relevant to the artwork. If you are going to talk about being born in or living in a beach community as being important to your artwork, and then there's nothing about the beach visually compelling about the beach in your artwork, then that's not really a relevant detail. So you notice that he has separated out bio from artist statement. I want to pull up his site as well so you can see that for yourselves. Again, a lot of vertical scrolling. If you hover over one of the pieces, it will pull up a thumbnail. Some of them give you, at the very least, the technique and the size, but we don't really see a lot of information necessarily about dates on these. So that's something that could be perhaps improved. Our next example is a really nice website. This is a very well-known landscape painter. April Gornick is very, very successful, and you can kind of tell that from the high-quality photographs that are on her site. It has some animation, so it definitely looks like the work of a professional. It is a really well-organized page. When you click on artwork, you get your selections of her types of works, from large paintings, small paintings, drawings, prints, and you notice that they are categorized. I can click on any one of these to see more within this category. Notice that she's giving us things in reverse chronological order. Her most recent large paintings, for instance, then paintings that predate that category, going backward in time. That's really useful. She does have, under her About tab, both a biographical sketch but also an artist statement. And this is a really good example of someone who's a working professional artist whose statement is, I think, a little bit too brief. She, in fact, uses this two-sentence statement and says underneath it that for 25 years she's been using this very basic statement. She then expands on it somewhat, but I would suggest that not every artist who is fantastic and talented in the art making is equally a good guide for you in terms of how to write a compelling artist statement. Let's take a look at her page really quickly. And you can see it's really nicely animated, it's intriguing, it engages you for sure, but what we really want to see is the work. When I go to the artwork page, I can scroll through and see things again in reverse chronological order. Let's just pick one at random. Let's look at recent drawings from 2019 back to 06. When I click that category, I then get individual pieces and I can scroll through. They're fantastically beautiful, but we get titles, dates, materials, sizes. All of that is really important information. Again, with the About page, you have a lot of information on the bio, but what we're really looking for is artist statement. And again, I think this is a little bit too brief for our purposes. So our next artist to look at there we go, is Ontko. And Tina Ontko is an artist who primarily was known for printmaking earlier in her career and has moved to sculpture. To me, this particular page is a little bit too simplistic in terms of not a lot of information, not a lot of things to engage you, not a lot of categories to look at. This is almost the opposite of the one we started with. Too much information. This one is a little bit too little. I have a feeling that Ontko's page is in the midst of being redesigned. You can see that there are tabs kind of missing here. So my suspicion is that tabs that existed earlier for printmaking and other categories are being slowly replaced. When you go to the actual sculpture page, you do see more of the current work. And again, you've got dates, 2020, sizes, materials, titles. And if you scroll down on that page, you do get embedded within it without a heading or identifier to let you know that it's the artist statement. There is one, and it's an artist statement that actually I think is a pretty good example for us. It may be a little wordy in terms of its use of kind of art world specific terms. For instance, by traditional means of labor and craft, she uses natural and found materials to produce physical objects through an ecofeminist lens in an attempt to convey a sense of how the body shapes the built environment and circulates notions of worth within it. That may be a little bit too much of a word salad for you. You could break this down into a little bit more direct language. it is maybe more appropriate for someone in their graduate or postgraduate work. But you do get a sense that what she's trying to address is issues that are specifically about the environment from a female or feminist point of view. And you can see that being repeated through a lot of the statement itself. One thing that I like about the statement is that it does give you a suggestion or an indication of how she works, how she goes about making her work. That's important. I'm not crazy about the fact, frankly, that it is in third person. She refers to herself as she rather than I, and that may be also a little bit of kind of an old school idea. Just want to show you the page so you can see what that looks like. So this is the home page, and there's really not much there. To get the information that I just showed you, I had to click the sculpture page and then kind of go digging for it. There it is without a heading about the statement. It's a good length and it is logical, but it's maybe a little bit too art world specific for our purposes. Here's a good example that is easy to follow, I think, but maybe a little overwhelming for you because the artist herself uses so many different types of practice. This is the work of Diane Landry. She's a very successful Canadian-based artist. She does installations, performance pieces, and sculpture that's kinetic, things that move. So she has a lot of different categories on her page. So you could imagine your portfolio being geared to just one of these ideas. When you click on any one of those subjects, you're immediately taken to a gallery in reverse chronological order that shows multiple pieces within that category. She also has under her About page, and if we click on About, notice there is a specific area for an artist statement. This one is really good, but it is really long. The reason I think that it needs to be as long as it is to cover all the different aspects of what it is that Diane Landry is really all about. You could probably just take the first 3 paragraphs as a very good example that describe what it is that she does, how she does it, and why she does it. Those are the main points we want to look at. So let's take a look at her page so you can see for yourselves how that works. So here's our main page. I can select any of these categories. We could go to works that move. You can see the pieces there. I can scroll through. I can go in and take a look at these works. She works a lot with light, and you can see she's given us a lot of information there. Under the About page, in addition to a lot of other things, including the resume, which might be interesting to look at, we can see her statement there. And again, when we pull that up, you notice that it is really quite lengthy. So perhaps a good example for the website, but maybe not the best example for our purposes of artist statement. This one we might flip the other way. This website is a little basic and it's a little dated looking, but the statement itself may be really of interest to you. So if we can design something that is sort of between these last 2 examples, I think we're in good shape. This is the work of Carol Wax, who is a remarkably talented printmaker. She primarily does mezzotint, which is a very complex process in which a copper plate is roughened with a tool called a rocker so that it will accept ink across its entire surface, and then areas of lighter value are burnished and scraped away. It's almost like drawing with an eraser. If you've ever made a drawing by darkening a piece of paper with charcoal and then erasing the highlights, this is a metallic printable version of that very idea. The website is very well organized. I'm not crazy about this aspect. When I go to a particular type of work like the mezzotints, I get lots of tiny, tiny little thumbnails, and I have to click on them to open them to see them in any more detail. When I do that, they're really impressive. And notice again, she's given us dates and sizes as well as titles. If you look at this, that piece is right here. If you look at the setup here, she has got all of hers, again, arranged in reverse chronological order. She does also have an artist statement area for us, which is great. And her artist statement is just about the right length, and it very clearly addresses these three questions that I want us to think about. What does the artist make? How do they make what they make? What is their process? And most importantly, why do they make what they make? So you're going to be looking for good, clear, organized websites that give you a taste of what these artists are about, that don't overwhelm you with too much visual information, that provide you with the desire to learn more about them or to see more of their work. That's what we want your portfolios to do, but keep your eye out for artist statements, both good ones and bad ones.